culture is not vibes. I don't care what anyone tells you, but it is a feeling of who's promoted. What's respect look like on the work floor? That's culture.
Sabrina Saunders Mosby started her career at a Pittsburgh hospital as a teenage volunteer. Today, she sits on the board of that very same hospital. A community saw something in a kid from the Hill District, and she's been investing back into that community ever since. She's the CEO of Vibrant Pittsburgh, the organization working to make the Pittsburgh region a place diverse talent wants to come, stay, and grow. Sabrina's take on culture? It's the difference in values that are stated and values that are lived. And in a moment when burnout is spreading, clarity is scarce, and leaders are learning in real time what their people actually need, that gap has never mattered more. When her son asks her what she does for work, she tells him, "I spend every day trying to make better neighbors for myself, selfishly." This is how's work. Sabrina Saunders Mosby, thank you for joining us at the office today to talk about our favorite subject, which is work. So thank you, I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, the first question we always start with is, how's work?
Work is probably more different now than it's been my entire career. Work is challenging and it is sometimes fluid, but it is requiring me to think outside the box and to be more open-minded even than I think I've ever been in my career. Work is complex, but it's good. It's good. And I'm working as CEO of Vibrant Pittsburgh. And, what a great time to be in work that focuses on how to make our region, better and, more vibrant for the people that work here.
Yeah. I don't know if it's just I learn more as I work longer, or work is just becoming more complex and demanding more from me, and that work is becoming something of a continuous change, right?
Sure. So definitely continuous change, and I expect that. But I would have to argue that it's different.
Yeah.
The season we're in is it's a bit different, and so the complexity seems unwarranted.
Yeah.
But we're up for the challenge. I am up for the challenge, and if it was dull, then that would definitely be a problem. And so I look forward to solving and breaking through a new challenge every day, and it keeps you going. Remind you of your purpose, right? And my purpose in being a leader in this time that we're in is to show up and to, take a different crack at it, look at it a different way every single day.
You like to say here, this thing you do with your head, your heart, and your hands, this thing called work, right?
Well, as a parent, as a newer parent, I would say that the way that I approach and I think about work, that I model work has definitely changed a bit. Becoming a parent, because one, I want our son to, see the commitment, to understand ambition, right? When it comes to work, but also to recognize fulfillment, right? And to see me, contributing and making an impact as well, right? That those things can all be true.
Yeah.
In the space of work. And that's never been more important to me than, in this moment as I'm leading at work, but also as a parent.
Yeah. It's really impactful to slow down and pay attention to the moments that matter in this case. Yeah. So we're talking a little bit about what work means to you. So how do you define work? How do you define this thing that you go and do every day?
Well, technically, right, the thing that you take your talents and your skill to that makes a greater impact in whether an industry or in a region. For me, it's what fuels my soul and what I can look back and be proud about. Sometimes those are the things you get paid for, and sometimes those are the things that you actually invest in and pay for. I don't know how that works, but can all be considered work in my book.
Yeah.
And so it's the work that we do that holds a title, and the ones that perhaps don't, that still in some way can utilize your talents and your know-how and insight and be made better.
Yeah,
is what work is for me. It's fun though. And sometimes it's challenging.
You enjoy it.
I do.
You enjoy the challenge.
I do.
Yeah.
I enjoy I don't know about you, but I enjoy the challenge.
Yes, I do.
It keeps me coming.
Most days.
Yeah.
When I have the energy for it, right?
Yeah.
So what was your first job?
My first job, believe it or not, it was like the foundation for how I lead right now. So I grew up in Garfield, born in the Hill District in Pittsburgh, raised in the North Side, but I grew up in Garfield. And so I was in a parochial school, and you had to volunteer. So I volunteered at Westman Hospital as a candy striper. To make a long story short, while I was volunteering one summer, I met some kids in the elevator. And these kids had on white shirts, and I was wearing a red shirt. And we were doing the same kind of jobs, though. And so I said, what are you guys doing? And they told me they were working. And they were getting paid. And I'm like looking at my red shirt and, like I'm here too. And I'm volunteering because, it was a part of the curriculum for school. I'm not getting paid. And they said, oh, after your shift, we're going to go down to this development center and you're going to meet this guy and he'll tell you all about it. And so the next summer, I was a part of what was then Youth Works, but now is Learn and Earn. It's a summer youth employment program for the city. And it was these young kids in the community that introduced me to a community leader that got me set up with a job. I worked every summer at Westman Hospital in the HR department, which was a fantastic experience. Community and this idea of access and information is so important when it comes to being able to thrive in a space, right? Having access to opportunities, right? And having information, being connected.
Yeah.
That's so important to who I am and how I lead and what I try to provide for other people, even in my work today. And so that first job, the way that I was supported by community, right? The relationships that I was able to build, even as a kid, has certainly stuck with me and been really important to my entire trajectory. What's cool is there are through lines with that opportunity. So I now serve on the board for the Allegheny Health Network. Of course, West Penn is a part of that network, which is the coolest thing ever, right? My first job was in the hospital. That's a part of the hospital system that I happen to now support as a board director. But then in addition to that, I worked in the mayor's office, and a part of my work as the youth policy director was youth employment, right?
Yeah.
And I've ran a number of programs where we either hired or supported young people in Learn and Earn as well. And so I never forgot how important that was for me and what it does for young people in their future. Yeah.
Wow. It's such an impactful part of your life.
Absolutely.
It kind of shaped those early days of it
Absolutely.
for you.
And that youth development director, Rick, was my very first mentor.
Yeah.
Yeah. That I can remember outside of, family and people that look out for you, like very first, like
intentional sort of like
mentorship.
I know what this relationship is. I'm going to learn from you.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
walked in off the street, right? With a bunch of kids and they're like, hey, hook her up.
So did you yeah. Wow. So you're in the HR department, right?
I'm in the HR department. I met some amazing folks right there. Could you imagine, right? I'm learning about resumes. I'm sorting them. I'm seeing all kinds of people, the dynamics of interviewing, all of those things so early.
Did you think you were going to be an HR professional?
I didn't think that I was going to be an HR professional, but I had an interest in finance. Even though I ended up changing my major, that's a whole different story. But I didn't think that I was going to be an HR professional, but I did think that I would work in a business environment, and I got early access to what that looked like and what it felt like. Yeah, it didn't give me like the hey, go to medical school bug though for some reason. Right? A lot of people ask me that, like, man, it didn't make you want to go to medical school. I'm like, oh, not so much.
You have we talked about your identity around work. How was that shaped for you?
I come from a family of hard workers. I learned the importance of being committed and consistent to the thing that you call work. And, I grew up in a community where people went to work, in a community where people were middle class or, some poverty too, me more on the poverty side than the middle class. And work was necessary to put food on the table for your family, to put a roof over your head, right? Those are the types of conversations that I heard in the household. I think I grew up wanting work to feel and look different than that, right? have to do because otherwise you're going to be on the street and you're going to be hungry, to I have something to contribute and I am smart and I'm skilled and I have ideas and that's valuable.
Yeah.
And so I think that my experience made me just want a different frame of reference for work. And I've been working towards that.
Yeah. The builder mentality, right?
Yeah. And it's also one of privilege, right?
Yeah.
Where you have the freedom to think about it in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Having the time. I was the first to go to college in my family. And I come from a very large family.
Yeah.
So to have the privilege to pick your head up and have enough reflection, or your parents to have enough reflection to say they want something better
for you.
Yeah. And then for you to understand what that means, the responsibility that comes with that is a pretty powerful thing.
Yeah, sure. I mean, my mom invested in my education, and knew that was important, even though, she did not have a strong formal education, and wanted that, to just go a different way for me. And so that was an investment that she thought was important. And she was right. It mattered, right? The level of access and opportunity and insight that, that was availed to me because of education, and the spaces that I was placed in because of education made a difference in my outlook and my perspective.
Yeah.
In more so than what I was seeing day to day, even at home.
How do you describe what you do for work to your son?
To my son.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I tell him all the time, and I say this anyway to other people, that I spend every day trying to make better neighbors for myself, selfishly. I want to create communities where we have the best neighbors ever, because we are Pittsburghers and we're not going anywhere. And so I get to go to work and build relationships with folks who ultimately will become our friends and our neighbors, and to help companies do the same thing. And he gets that because he likes having friends. Essentially, that's the reality of it, right? At Vibrant Pittsburgh, we are working with employers to help them create environments where people want to come and work and where they can thrive. And ultimately, that means that those amazing folks will be a part of our community. I just am lucky that I get to meet a lot of them. And if we click, then I've got fast friends.
And what a lovely way to look at all of it, right?
Yeah.
Life is the neighbor you have.
Absolutely.
And the community you're building from that one neighbor to the next neighbor to the next neighbor.
I mean, we grew up in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, so it's not a farce. This is the reality.
Yeah. So part of our work here is to talk about the part of work that we think is closest to community, and that's culture.
Yeah.
So workplace cultures, right? At Vibrant Pittsburgh, you're very active in helping organizations create stronger cultures, more diverse cultures. How do you define work culture specifically?
Work culture specifically. So culture is not vibes. I don't care what anyone tells you, but it is a feeling, right? Culture is how workplace culture is how people feel at work. Who is listened to, who's promoted. Culture is behavior, right? The behavior of the senior leadership team all the way down to sustaining workforce, right? What's respect look like on the work floor? And who's invited in to meetings, to conversations? That's culture. What activities do we prioritize in the workplace and outside of it? How do we support each other inside and outside of work? That's culture. That's workplace culture. But it's also that of community. Regardless of how you look at it, it's hard to separate the way we build culture and culture is built outside of work and how we build culture inside of work. I think it's the same process.
Yeah, it is very similar to community, right? And in some way, our work culture, the thing we get from it is very much like the community in our neighborhood that we live, right?
And whether you believe it or not, you have a work culture, right? Yeah. Whether it's great or not, there is a culture.
Yeah.
And, if you spend the time to talk with the people that work within that space, you will learn that culture is felt differently, usually, by everyone. But hopefully there's a through line, right? If you're being intentional about building a culture that people desire to work in, there will always be a through line, even if it's not completely balanced across the board. Now it's challenging to do that. right? Because people, they approach things and they approach work differently.
Yeah, day in and day out, right? You can have you can
vary.
observe some inconsistencies at times.
For sure,
right?
for sure. But there's going to be a through line in how it's felt, how the workplace is felt, and how it's perceived as well from your customers and, of course, potential talent.
Vibrant Pittsburgh's mission is to make this region a place where diverse talent wants to come, wants to stay, and wants to grow. What does it look like when talent is coming here and the community is thriving and Pittsburgh is thriving?
We want people to see Pittsburgh as a place where they can see themselves. Bottom line, I can see myself working here, but I can also see myself living here. Those two are intertwined. If I can see myself working here, I have to be able to see myself living in community. To be in community is so important. The 9 to 5, absolutely, right? You need to be able to be productive and see a trajectory for yourself professionally. But after 5 is where roots are developed. It's what you do outside of work that is going to connect you and keep you sustained and retained in the workplace. And so we can't ignore that experience. And so, yes, it's about seeing yourself reflected in the fabric of the community of the workplace and also of the fabric of the community outside of it.
Yeah. I mean, the reality, cities are place-based things that exist because there is a infrastructure and or a business, a thriving business area, right?
Right. It all works together. It all works together. And and a lot of our business leaders understand that. If the community is not doing well, my business isn't going to do well. Right. And so that's why do companies invest in community? Why they give back, right? Yeah. Not because they want to look good, because they understand that the community reflects their business. Yeah. They're part of it. Yeah. Not just in it, they're part of the community. And companies that do that recognize that if they want to continue to grow and to thrive and to advance in their business and industry, that the community around them has to be successful too.
You recently wrote about this idea that organizations need more clarity. And you say in a blog post recently that burnout today is less about workload and more about working in the dark. People are stretched, the ground keeps shifting, and exhaustion sets in when clarity does not keep pace with change. I thought that was such a unique way to look at what is causing burnout for individuals, because we as humans can take in a lot of information and we can do a lot of things and we have a lot of energy. But the one thing we need is information to where we're going, to know not only what to do, but that our work matters, that what we're doing matters and what it's building to. So can you talk a little bit about what you mean by clarity there?
I think I may have alluded to this, but becoming a parent has changed the way that I lead. And this is a great example of the importance of clarity is that as our young people get older, they have more questions, right? And my son is 5. We are in the question and answer phase of life, right? He has questions not because, because he's growing, he's interested, in all those things, but he just wants to understand and to prepare. That's it. I want to understand and I want to prepare. There may be nothing that I can do around this thing you're going to tell me. Me being able to understand and prepare creates some level of security for me. Yeah. That it's no longer just in your hands. Now I am accountable to this thing. I know, right? Our employees are exactly the same way. And we must safeguard them like we do our children. If we want them to be able to rise to the occasion, we want them to have the information and know what to do with it, then we've got to speak to them with clarity. Now, they don't have to know everything, right? They don't need to know everything. But there are certain things that we can share with them that will help them understand and to plan. And that's all they really want to be able to do. Can I understand this and plan? It also provides me with a level of accountability to it now. Now I'm in it with you. I feel like we're in partnership with this thing. And a lot of what's happening is like, you'll know when you need to know, or you don't need to know this information right now, or fear of if you do know, then how do you act, or what comes after that, versus the trust that's required to share information. And when you don't have that sense of security or trust, then that's where burnout comes in, right? You're stressed. You're coming up with your own conclusions about what's next and where we're going, right? I don't know if I can trust you to take me where we're going. You won't even trust to tell me that we're going there.
Yeah.
And so there's a certain level of clarity that reduces that fear. And it's about trust. The more organizations realize that you have to create a level of trust between you and those folks that are they're your greatest asset, I think the better and our well-being will be as a part of a variety of workplaces.
Yeah, there's a big gap between things that will keep it safe and things that need to be known, right?
Yeah. And that keeps it growing. I think there's a part of it that's just about being in partnership with the folks in the workforce, with your team. How do you refer to your teams? That's all a part of culture, right? The culture that we build. Do folks have a voice in how things are run and operated, or don't they? How much do you value that? I tend to try and hire people that are much smarter than me, that can do things that I can't do. I think great leaders do that. And are you listening to those people? I mean, I hired you because you know more than me. So am I listening to you or not? Or do I invest?
Yeah.
I think the greatest of us recognize that we are in partnership with the people that we build with. And partnership means trust and respect, right? But what's the third part of it? Communication.
It's the fuel of all of those things.
It is, absolutely. It's what keeps it going and growing. And it keeps us on track too.
And it's hard at the pace of things to be intentional about those types of things. It really takes a certain amount of reflection and certainly the willingness to go places where you might be uncomfortable, right? Or to have to nurture things. It is about planting seeds. It is about being intentional about where you spend your time and your energy in that way. We learn in human-centered design that it's about diversity of inputs. That'll lead to the best solution ever. Is the diversity of inputs. If you can get different people, the maximum amount of people you can manage in a room that think as differently as possible, you're gonna arrive at an answer of something that doesn't look like what anyone expected. And it's going to be the true solution for what's needed next.
If you truly want something to be excellent, you build it that way. And there are tenets that you consider in building, right? A number of years ago, I heard someone say, if you want something to be diverse, you build it that way. And I for a while, I ran with that. Like, oh yeah, right. If you're really intentional about it, if you really thought that, then you would build it that way. But it's like, wait a minute. No, if you want something to be excellent, diversity is a part of it, right? It's a tenet of building towards excellence, right? Yeah. It is not the end all be all. It's a part of it, and a fundamental part.
You said something that stuck with me in a conversation we had before today. The culture is a business lever. What do you mean by that, and where does that belief come from?
Well, the way, so I talked about culture being, it's not vibes, but it is feeling. The way that people experience work or community, right? Community of work. And if you get culture inside the business right, then it's a lever for success, right? And it's one that you can utilize. If you build a culture of individuals who rise to the occasion, right? Then when it comes time to scale, that people are going to show up ready to work. If you build a culture on uncertainty, then you're not really sure if people are coming to work on Monday and if they're staying through Friday, right? And so from a business perspective, building cultures where people want to come and stay and want to invest their time and see opportunity for themselves to grow and feel like they have a voice, is really you saying, I'm investing in the future of work in my business.
Yeah. And
I can pull that lever when it's time for me to grow, to move, to reassess. I can tap into it because it's consistent.
Yeah.
I'm not questioning it. I'm not confused. I have intentionally built something that is solid.
I mean, that is the business case for culture.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And, in this time when, and it would be irresponsible not to mention this, we're in a time right now where, the workplace is kind of like a parking lot. Folks are sticking and staying. And so the work of retention has slowed. We see jobs posted and that just sit for months. And people are holding tight to their positions, to their roles because of the economy, because of uncertainty, right? That's the space that we're in right now. And, you don't want to confuse that loyalty with good culture, right?
Yeah.
Like the reactionary behavior in response to the economy of people staying in roles and not transitioning as quickly has nothing to do with whether or not your place of business is a good place to work.
Yeah.
And so what I would say right now in this season, that you still need to understand how engaged your employees are. And if they believe that they're valued in the work they're doing is contributing in a way that makes sense. The flip side of that is you have people that stay, right? And if you misjudge it, you miss out on the fact that they aren't producing. Mm-hmm. They're not doing great work. They're just sitting there doing work.
Yeah.
Because they are not sure if they go somewhere else that they're going to be laid off, right? And so, as a place of business, as a person leading in business, you still need to do the work to understand what's driving your people, and also recognize if it's the economy.
You mentioned something earlier in this context about loyalty, and that's a word I have not heard in a long time when it comes to employees, right? It used to be a word you used to say all of the time. It used to be said all of the time about organizations and building loyalty with your employees. I haven't really thought about that and I have been missing that word. And I have been missing that idea with organizations and creating loyalty with their employees.
Well, I think it's a good word to reflect on.
And it goes both ways, right? Like it's also
like trust.
Has the organization been loyal to me?
And in many times, the organization can be very loyal to you. But what does that mean, right? So we also used to hear things like the workplace is like a family. And now it's kind of like, my family's at home, right? And we saw that a lot during the pandemic where you realize like, wait, no, this is my family. Yeah. And, this is maybe, I've got work friends and, my work family or what have you, but this environment is not a family. Yeah. Right. Unless you work in a family business, which I know a lot about. And so these ideas of what was, what's created that benefits the business have turned a bit, right? Loyalty of employees, right? Like, what do I do to create loyalty of my, for my employees? Well, if there is a place, if there is room for me to grow, if I'm contributing positively, if the environment that I'm in is one of collaboration and that there's trust, then I'm more than likely to stay. But am I loyal to this particular employer? I might give you a chance to offer me something that another employer isn't before jumping ship because of those things, right? That's where loyalty comes in. Yeah. But I'm not going to choose this company over myself. Yeah. And my goals and my plans for my family. Yeah. Right? I think that comes with things like choice and other options. If we look in, we go back into the past of, how the workforce used to be and, what were the options? Okay, if you're in Pittsburgh and you worked in a steel mill, well, like how many were there? Yeah. Right. And if I leave this one, who's connected to the other? And am I going to have a good shot? Am I going to have an opportunity? Have I burnt a bridge? Yeah. It's not like that anymore. Not exactly. Right. And so the expectation has changed. But because of that, I think the way that, employers engage with their employees, that's changed too, because they know that that's shifted. And that's why it's harder to build trust. So those things are, I think that there are tenets of it. But the way that we're thinking about family in the workplace and thinking about loyalty in the workplace has certainly shifted.
Yeah, it has. We're curious about return to office or return to the office, return to work, right? Yeah. We're curious about it from the standpoint of, is it about control, right? Is it about what do I control of my time as an employee? And then from an employer standpoint, organizations aren't necessarily set up to measure contribution in a way that is the micro and the macro, right? If it's a long-term project, I can measure whether we're hitting our deadlines, but day in and day out, is an organization worried about how I'm spending 4 hours of the week in between tasks, right?
Sure.
What are we really trying to measure and be concerned about? Are we wanting to be in person because we want to build stronger organizations and stronger cultures, right? To your point about doctor's offices, I love being able to see my doctor or my nurse practitioner virtually, right?
Sure.
Because I can get in quickly and see them, right?
Yeah.
It's not a disruption in my day. I can just pop in. But I only enjoy that because I have built an in-person relationship with both of those individuals.
That's it, right? It's the relationship side of things, right? Like, how are we building and nurturing relationships? There are people that have worked remotely globally, right, for decades, right? That has always been a thing. And there's a time and a place, obviously, for it. Is it for everyone? Is it for every business? Probably not. And, obviously we're seeing that. You mentioned control and some of the other things that I think you make assumptions about, right? Like, what is this all about? What's the reason? I think there are multiple priorities at play. But one thing that I think is ignored, I think all of these things are true, right? It is about collaboration. It is about being able to build morale. It's about trust, either having it or lack thereof, right? Managing contribution, though, you mentioned, I think is important to note, because who is the level of flexibility around remote and hybrid work impacting in the workplace too, right? I would argue that people of color and women are unfortunately suffering with the flexibility, being given the flexibility the most around exposure, relationship building, and opportunity for growth in those environments, right? And so if the flexibility is fantastic, right, for life and being able to contribute still, for the trajectory of your career, those individuals are not sustaining and building the relationships. They may not have had them. They may not have had the networks. So you're not building your network through the remote experience and environment. And in person, believe it or not, in the workplace, those opportunities are more fruitful.
Yeah.
You have more of a chance to showcase your work, to build a relationship, to engage. Obviously, if I'm seeing you every day, I'm not going to miss what you're doing at home.
Yeah. It is about access.
It's about access. Yeah. And there are people that your wife, right, who I've only seen on screens, right? And I'm like, I got to get to her, right?
Yeah.
Why? Because I know that when we meet in person, that's it.
Yeah.
Lights out.
Even
right?
thinking about your first job story, right?
Yeah.
If you wouldn't have been in an elevator and looked over and seen them in the white uniforms, right? You wouldn't have said anything. You wouldn't have access to that information necessarily.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And those moments matter. And sure, you can build and you can connect and do all the things. I'm not going to undercut that as an opportunity, but there is nothing like us sitting here together, right?
Nothing.
The energy,
Nothing.
the way that we're engaging to build, right? Even, like the way that you react, and that, this is something that is only fueled by our presence.
Yeah.
That's something that I value for sure. I think I talked earlier with you, like, I'll send an email, but I pick up the phone. If you're going to hear from me, you're going to hear the phone ring. I want to talk to you.
It's something that's getting lost in this conversation because it is then about something that it's not really about, right? Because it is about the human nature of what we need. Because even as employees, we want flexibility, but man, we don't even know when we're doing things that are bad for us sometimes, right? Because it's easier. It's easier for me to do this. It's more efficient for me to do this. It's more, I don't need to drive. I don't need to go somewhere. This is easy. I can just go to my computer. Sure. But that friction of doing those things is really the point of it on some level. So it's a really complex thing for organizations and for people to figure out. I just hope organizations and leaders and people are patient to sift through it.
Yeah,
versus
and understand.
Being forced.
Oh, and the other piece is, we hear all this conversation about work-life balance and, well-being is really important. But if work-life balance was possible, the jury is out on that for me. But if work-life balance was possible, we're definitely not going to get to it with remote work, right? Because that is a place where work and life coexist now for so many people, and one does not leave the other.
Yeah,
I am always at home. I am always at work.
What's the one thing from your perspective, that leaders consistently get wrong about building culture?
Culture's not a poster, right? It's not a tagline. I think that sometimes we try to communicate our way to culture. It's something that has to be cultivated and built. And it's the language that we use, the way that we refer to certain things, right? That's important. It's a part of building it, but it's not it. The thing that you run with, that you want everybody to say, like we all say this one thing and it's cool. That is actually a part of your culture, is not the culture.
Yeah.
Right. The way that you look at things and that you refer to things within your business is a part of the culture, but it's not the culture. It's how people feel it. Like, do they believe it?
Yeah.
So if you got a tagline that says like, we are one, and that might be someone's tagline, so I'm not referring to any particular company, but if that's it, do people feel that way?
Yeah.
They feel like they're a part of this and they're in this with you, that we are one, that we, that I believe what's being said about, this particular product. We speak with unity and unison because we believe it, and we've all built it together, that we take shared ownership.
Yeah.
That's what culture is. And I think that sometimes, the leaders can be short-sighted in thinking that what we say is the culture.
Yeah.
Just because you say it doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah. To your point earlier, it's felt, right?
Yeah,
it has to be
something
felt and experienced.
Right. It's experience in the way that people behave, right?
Yeah.
Those behaviors are really, really important.
Yeah. And you have to be careful what you measure, right? You give a leader a measurement device. I know what they're going to do with that, right? We've
Sure.
got we have leaders and we have organizations who say, I want 60, 70% of the people to be able to recite the purpose.
The purpose.
Right?
Sure.
And I mean, you usually get people to repeat something. That's one thing, but do they feel it? Is
Oh
it
my
experienced?
goodness. So you are brilliant. That is a perfect example,
Yeah.
right? So if you have a purpose, like this is our purpose statement
Yeah.
as an organization, right? These are our values even. The difference in values that are stated and values that are lived
Yeah.
is your culture.
Yeah. Even with organizations that are really strong culturally, they may not even know their values.
Yeah.
But when you say it, when you tell them, okay, here are your 4 values,
Okay.
and I ask them, can you tell me a story about each one? And they go, okay, yeah, cool. I can tell you a story about, I can tell you 10 stories about each one, because they feel it, right?
Sure.
It
It's
isn't
not rehearsed.
It's not rehearsed. Yeah.
No,
Yeah, so-
absolutely. It's not rehearsed. I mean, it's nice, right, to be able to, recite them and all the things. I'm always really impressed. I do a bad job of those kinds of things, but I can look at a team member and express how they've communicated to me that they're experiencing culture.
Yeah.
And that's a better measurement. You also can't measure by, I talked about, people will tell you with their feet. Well, if you are trying to measure engagement and, everyone's told that if you don't come to this particular thing, you're going to get fired. Well, I mean, that's a different kind of thing, right? Yeah. And so you've got to be really cognizant of how people are executing on your plans.
Yeah.
And what you want to be realized. And so if you're a leader that is, communicating that you want to see something in your company, you got to be very clear. Clarity is important. How are the people interpreting? How are the people that are leading with me interpreting the pathway that we need to take to get there? And how important is that? Because that's what the people that are receiving the information and that are supposed to execute on it. That's how they're going to experience it. And how they experience it is what's most important.
Mm-hmm. I have 2 questions to wrap up. What does a thriving Pittsburgh look like to you?
Sure. So first of all, I love Pittsburgh. I love being from Pittsburgh. I love everything that is possible. And for me, where we can grow to, which is a thriving Pittsburgh, means that one, a robust economy, right? Where there's opportunity and where people can meet that opportunity from every walk of life and see themselves in the space, living, working, and thriving themselves individually. I am so encouraged by the most recent public-private partnerships around revitalizing downtown, right? Just gave us a sight into what's possible when we have a deadline. More deadlines, please.
Yes, indeed.
And I think it's the future of how we're going to approach growth in this region, right? It takes all of us. It takes all of us partnering together, putting some, having some skin in the game and committing to doing more and growing. And when people realize it and feel it, they're going to want to be a part of it too. And that's what makes us thrive.
We often talk about the thing that makes Pittsburgh special is oftentimes the thing that holds it back as well.
Sure.
So what do you think holds Pittsburgh back from becoming? It's always becoming.
So I don't even look at it that way. I do look at it as becoming, but what's wrong with that? As people, we're always evolving and changing and growing and trying to become the best version of ourselves. And that's how this region is too. We've pivoted during really tough and hard times. We've triumphed and we've taken advantage of opportunity. We've transformed into the space where there's, education and medicine and technology. I think becoming means that we're always striving for more, that we're not comfortable with settling, right, in our current state. And that's encouraging to me, right? That we're not going to be comfortable with stagnation, that we always want to continue to grow, that we know that there's opportunity for us to try and grasp. I think that that's a superpower, honestly. And the way that you even describe Pittsburgh, that is not only what makes us unique and special, but it's the reason that we're always becoming. Because we are strong and gritty. We are welcoming. We are forward thinking as much as we are reflective. And that's what creates the environment to constantly reinvent and reimagine who we can be.
Final question. Why do you do what you do?
I can't help but go back to the very beginning. The way that I was invested in created a calling for me in my life. I'll never forget a community leader just in the neighborhood that saw something in me and decided, yep, I'm going to help her. And that's really all that it took. There's been a constant reminder of that throughout my entire life. And you don't get that level of investment consistently without overflowing. And so I have an overflowing. And I do this work, one, is a way, right, to invest what's been invested in me back into something that I know can continue. But it's also because it feels so damn good. When I talk with folks that appreciate the work that we do at Vibrant Pittsburgh, who have, realize the benefit of our investment in their workplaces, right? Whether it's programming or it's learning, whether it's a conversation that impacted the way that they think and that they're going to lead in the future, I know that I'm doing great work. And it's not just great work that is going to sit on a shelf that's a practice, but it's in practice through individuals, through individual lives who lead those lives at work and then go back to their community and lead them at home. And I do things that I think make my family proud, and that's important to me. Mom's always saying, I'm proud of you for the thing. She doesn't even know what's going on. She's like, oh, I'm so proud of you, right? That you're out there doing those things. I'm just trying to make my mama proud, I guess. Yeah.